Hello, fabulous scholars. Are you ready to hear the scholar's tale from Canterbury Tales? I should explain one thing. By scholar, it actually means that he's going to university, so he's like going to college. But often, what they would do is while they were going to college, they might also teach younger students, like elementary school age students. So when he mentioned that he had students, or somebody was making fun of his students, or something like that yesterday, it was because he is not only a student, but a teacher at the same time. So, the scholar's tale is called The Test of a Good Wife. Lord Walter was strong, handsome, and accomplished, like his father before him. When he came to power over his little province, his little bit of land, the peasants and farmers who had served his father were proud to serve him. They paid their tithes, taxes, and doffed their caps to him and waited to see whether Walter would in turn have a son. Just as the seasons came and went, so came and went the generations of lords at the manor house. But after a while, the people grew restless, sort of like you, Maudie. Walter showed no sign of marrying, and without a wife, how would he have a son to follow him? The people of the estate screwed up their courage and suggested to Walter that he really ought to be getting married. "Oh," said Walter, "I never thought of that. I suppose you're correct." And the people breathed a sigh of relief and looked forward to the wedding. Preparations were made. "A feast for 200, said the cooks to the tradesmen at the back door of the manor house. "He's brought jewels fit for a princess," said the tradesmen to their wives. "He sent to Padua for a silk wedding gown," said the gossiping women. But who is he going to marry?" On the day arranged for his wedding, Walter set out with a parade of 50 men and women, all in their best clothes, as if he were going out to meet his bride. At the edge of his land, he halted his horse beside a patched, broken-down, rain-leaky hovel. For it was not quite true that Walter had not thought of marrying. He had once said to himself as he rode past this old cottage on his estate, "If I ever marry, it will be to Griselda." So here's Lord Walter riding past this very old cottage on his estate, and there you see Griselda. Besides her beauty, Griselda had every quality perfect in the eyes of man. She never stopped working, spinning wool, washing, tending her father's few scraggy sheep. She never giggled or gossiped like other teenage girls. She never lost her temper when things went wrong. It was as if a lifetime of wisdom and peacefulness had found its way into her head while she was still young. Best of all, she had never been heard to complain, not even when she tore her only miserable dress on a thorn bush, not even when her overworked hands were blue with cold, not even when she had had no food to eat for 2 days. Wow, scholars, I couldn't do that. So Walter dismounted beside Griselda's house, took her old father to one side, and asked his permission to marry the girl. Poor old man, he was too astonished to speak. And before he could collect his wits, he was sitting at a table in his damp, drafty house with his lord on one side and his daughter on the other. Griselda, who did not understand what was happening, sat with her hands in her lap, her eyes in her hands, and never once looked up. "Griselda, I have decided that I would like to marry you," said Walter in a businesslike way. "I've asked your father, but do you have anything to say?" "My lord," whispered Griselda, "I and everybody in the province already work for you. Whatever you want, I want." "Good," said Walter. "I know it's rather unusual for someone of my standing to take someone so shabby and poor as a wife, but I assure you I've thought about it. There is just one thing." "My lord, you do me far too great an honor." Yes, never mind that. You must promise me that my word will always be final in everything. When I say yes, you must never say no, not by so much as a frown. I hate complaining women. Do you agree? My lord, who am I to argue with you in anything? Whispered Griselda. You honor me too deeply. Yes, yes. Well, then it's settled. Ladies! In came the ladies in waiting with the silken wedding dress, and they took off Griselda's old dress, holding it at arm's length with their lips curled back in disgust, and dressed her for a wedding. With her golden hair brushed and a crown on her head, Griselda was so transformed that the neighbors themselves hardly recognized her. Isn't she just the luckiest woman in the kingdom? They said to her old father as they watched the group move away. But he only shook his head and said, No good can come of such a thing, and turned back into his doorway. Griselda made a radiant bride, a fairy tale wife for the handsome lord. It's Griselda in her wedding dress. And when a baby daughter was born to her, she made a perfect mother too. People came from all over Italy just to see her. And when Walter was away, Griselda would take his place in settling arguments and lawsuits. She was so just and fair that they said that she must have been sent from heaven to make Walter the perfect wife. And then the tests began. Walter, who had never known what it was like to have a bad wife, began to wonder if Griselda was really as perfect as she seemed. She always agrees with me, he thought, but then I'm always right, so of course she would. What if I were to ask of her something really... One day, as Griselda sang their lovely daughter to sleep, a brutish-looking servant came in. Your husband sent me to take away the baby, he said, 'cause of the bad feeling among his people. Bad feeling? Said Griselda, who knew full well how much everyone loved her and her tiny daughter. Bad feeling, yes, ma'am, against you and the little girl, on account of you being no better than a peasant by birth. The young mother looked at her baby sleeping in the crib, but Griselda's face showed nothing of what she was thinking. Walter knows best, she said. Do whatever he told you to do. The servant bit his lip and shuffled his boots on the floor. Then he snatched the baby up as if he would kill her then and there, but instead tucked her under his arm and strode out of the manor house. The next morning, Griselda greeted Walter at breakfast with her usual smiling cheerfulness and went about her day as if her little daughter had never existed. She was never again heard to mention the little one's name. But perhaps when a baby boy was born to her, she had twice the reason to love and cherish him. Walter now had what he and his people wanted most, an heir to inherit the manor and estates and the family's noble title. Delightedly, he watched the little boy learn to sit up, crawl, stand, toddle, and speak his first words before the old cruelty took hold of Walter again. Madam, said the serving man, slamming into the bedroom and grabbing the boy up in his two fists, your husband sent me to take away the boy because of the unhappiness he's causing. Unhappiness? Gasped Griselda, who knew how dearly everyone loved the little lad. Your husband's people are unhappy, thinking that your boy might one day become the lord over them, him being no better than a peasant, thanks to his mother. That's what your lord and husband says, lady. Can such a small boy cause such great unhappiness? Said Griselda, taking her son's face between her hands to calm his crying. Well, if my good lord thinks so, you must do as he tells you. Who am I to argue? After the servant had shut the door behind him, Griselda never spoke her son's name again, or shed a tear. What a wife, thought Walter gloatingly. What a good, obedient, loyal wife! Oh, I know how much she loved those children of hers. And then he thought, of course, I've given her a life of luxury here that she never would have had with her father. I suppose she would say and do anything to keep her fine clothes and soft bed. I wonder how she would behave if I... We'll find out the rest of Walter's plan and what happens next time. Bye, scholars.